So scanning is something that's been kind of part of my career, I guess. This is using lasers. So right back in 1995, when I was at CSIRO working with draglines, we bought our first laser scanners to track these ropes that were swinging in front of the dragline. We discovered, of course, you could use these same laser scanners actually to map things. So if you point these same lasers and move them around a building, you could actually measure thousands and thousands of points around a building. And we kind of demonstrated the same actually on draglines. We had a project called digital terrain mapping or dragline terrain mapping, where we put a laser on the boom of a dragline looking at the ground, and then as the dragline swung around, it would actually make a map of the ground. That was commercialized also. So that's also a commercial product that miners can buy now. But that same technology can be used to map anything. So, you can map buildings, you could map outdoors, you can map trees, you can really map whatever you like. Which has now become a popular tool in the surveying industry. So you'll sometimes see surveyors out on the streets now with big laser scanners, and that they can literally collect millions of points a second of their surroundings. So I took that laser scanning to a sort of a certain level in the mining industry, where we could use these lasers to map terrain, but they were relatively simple scenarios where the ground was static and the mining machine was moving. What we wanted to do next in robotics is, put the laser on a more randomly moving, I guess, sort of platform like a robot. So CSIRO invested some more money and recruited people, and we got a team together of the best people in the world to actually develop a solution to this. And this problem is known as SLAM, which is simultaneous localization and mapping. And it's a generic problem in robotics about how you drive around the world and also do mapping at the same time. So up until the SLAM problem had been solved, you sort of had to know where you are in order to map things. And this was this problem of doing mapping and localizing, which is knowing where you are at the same time. And it had been solved by lots of people all around the world. Actually, one of the first people to solve this was a guy called Hugh Durrant-White and his team at the University of Sydney. So they had kind of solved this problem in the sort of the mid-90s in a certain way, there's many solutions to this problem now. So we had a team develop a system with a handheld laser. So it was kind of our idea that you could kind of map from a randomly moving object. And I remember one day the core team was a guy called Rob Zlot and Mike Bosser. And I remember Mike coming into my office one day and he had one of these laser scanners in his hand and he said, "Look what we can do." And he sort of just moved it around in his hand and out of the computer popped a beautiful 3D map of the room, from a seemingly randomly moving laser. And they kind of solved this key problem. And that then further developed into a proper handheld version, which was this device called Zebedee. And so this was a laser on a spring. So rather than have everyone just hold this thing and randomly move it around, they put a small laser on top of a spring, made a handle, and they would kind of walk around and it would bob up and down. And it was called Zebedee because there was a TV character called Zebedee, who was a creature with, instead of having legs, he had a spring. It was from it was a French animation thing from the 60s, I think. So anyway, this was this Zebedee thing. So I wasn't really part of the technical team there. I was now kind of more running the lab, and so it was my job to promote it. So I would start to come up with outrageous ideas about how you could, where we could actually use this for real. And I kind of got inspired in the area of architectural mapping because my wife is an architect and academic in a school of architecture. And, she was always pointing out that we could use this technology in the world of architecture. So we started mapping buildings, which seemed like a really good thing. And we got, beautiful data out of that. And then I can't exactly remember how we ended up at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but someone thought of this idea that we knew that no one had mapped the inside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Everyone had mapped the outside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So there were traditional laser scanners that you would put on a tripod and, put them around and you could scan objects like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, but carrying that existing technology up the stairs and then setting it up every few steps was really not viable. So it needed something handheld. So we we got in contact with all the right people. There was an organization in the US called SCI-ARC, and they had already got the data for the external Leaning Tower of Pisa scans, and through all the various contacts, we somehow managed to convince the people that own the Leaning Tower of Pisa to let us go in before it opened in the morning. We got the hour before the standard public opening towers. They gave us the key. And this was with collaborators at a university in Pisa. We needed local contacts, and we got access to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So we spent that hour that morning walking up and down the stairs, and we managed to map this spiral staircase in the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And then we merged that with all the data that had already been collected of the outside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So the Zebedee device that I used when I mapped the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that then became commercialized. So CSIRO set up a joint partner company with a company in the UK called 3D Laser Mapping, and they created this company called GeoSlam, and that became a product. So people could buy a Zebedee. That then various product versions later, it's still, that sort of technology is still available through the same companies. And then off to the side, CSIRO started developing a flying version of similar kind of laser scanning technology. So not the handheld stuff, but we had this dream, again from the movies. There was one day we all went as a lab to see this movie called Prometheus, which was Aliens. Is it Aliens 3 or 4? But anyway, it's one of the Aliens movies. And in that movie, they find the crashed alien spaceship, and someone throws this thing in the air, and it flies around autonomously and maps the spaceship. And some of my colleagues said, "Oh yeah, we could develop that," and they did. So that's what happened. And now there's a product called HoverMap, made by a spin-off company of CSIRO called Emerson, and it does exactly that. You can put it in a mine, and it can autonomously fly around with no prior map, and it will map the 3D structure and navigate itself just like the thing in the Prometheus movie. The thing in the Prometheus movie is much smaller because sci-fi, physics doesn't really matter, but it effectively does exactly the same thing.